Hi friends, it's Droolbatz. It's really nice to see you. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2021 horror movie The Seventh Day. I'm going to be discussing it based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally how it compares or contrasts to other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. The movie begins with a young priest named Father Peter who's getting ready to perform an exorcism with a much more experienced priest who's done this kind of thing before. The exorcism is on a young boy, probably like age 10. Unfortunately, when they get there, the demon is trying to be really creepy and freak them out, and it starts talking to Father Peter and saying, like, oh, it's pointless, come to the dark side, blah, blah, blah. The older priest is trying to perform the exorcism, and the demon uses a cross necklace that the mom of this boy has to kill the older priest and lights the young boy on fire. He wasn't able to save him. Fast forward into the future, and Father Peter is now a very experienced exorcist. He's actually considered one of the most prolific in his region of the US. Now introduce Father Daniel. Father Daniel is a fresh-faced priest, brand new out of exorcist school, like I think maybe 3 days out of school. He really has no experience at all, and the diocese tries to pair him with Father Peter because he's experienced. Father Peter, he doesn't want this young kid who doesn't know anything tagging along with him. So he brings him to a homeless shelter to see if he can pick out who amongst the people there has a demon in them. Father Daniel and Father Peter discover a demon, and Daniel's kind of shook up because, he's never seen one in real life, even though he's been to school a lot. This is his first time seeing a demon. The task that they are faced with is concerning a young boy. He has killed his entire family. The church wants them to find out if it's a demon or what's going on specifically. Father Daniel is able to get in there and talk with him, and he hears the young boy saying that a man told him to do it. Obviously, a demon. However, because this kid's crimes are so serious, he's locked up tight, and it's hard for them to get to him. There's no way that they will be able to form an exorcism in a government building with everybody watching them. So they have to decide, should they try to break this boy out of this facility to perform this exorcism, even if it's going to get them in serious bad trouble and maybe even unleash the demon. You'll have to watch to find out. At 87 minutes long, The Seventh Day is a watchable, manageable length. Several actors of renown bring an air of legitimacy to the cast, and I thought that the actors did a good job. That said, unfortunately, the writing of this movie wasn't quite as good. The character dynamics were very stereotypical, especially between Father Peter and Father Daniel. You've seen it all before. The wizened guy who doesn't want the young guy hanging around, and the fresh-faced guy who just wants to prove himself. It was very stereotypical, and unfortunately, the way that it was written, it didn't bring anything new to the dynamic. So in that sense, it was very boring. A lot of the other characters were fairly one-dimensional and pretty forgettable as well. Visually, this movie didn't have a lot to offer, but one thing that it did bring to the table that I was very impressed with was its readability. Although it wasn't particularly creative in how it used its special effects, I personally found the CGI to be quite blah. And most of the effects were CGI. There were very few practical effects, and most of the shots were fairly standard ones that you would see anywhere. One thing that I was impressed with was the color in this movie. They kept the colors and the color scheme very dark. However, everything was saturated and very easy to read. Some movies, they tend to go with like sort of a darker, I don't know if you'd call it a filter or just less saturation to make it seem more solemn, but things end up getting washed out, sort of like how I look right now. I know I look washed out, and I don't know why it's like this. I'll play with the lighting next time. But yeah, a lot of movies end up looking like this. This movie, it kept the dark tone, the dark color scheme, and still was very easy to read, even the scenes that take place at night and in like the dark rooms and dark corridors. They were all very easy to read, so I was impressed with that element. Fortunately, the special effects in this movie were not that great. There was maybe one recognizable effect. This movie obviously deals with demons, so you see a lot of familiar tropes that you see in a lot of other demon movies. One that this movie brought that was good is they gave their characters that were affected by this demon a really creepy Joker-like smile. That was creepy, sorry. They gave their characters a really creepy smile that I haven't seen before, and I thought that was impressive. Um, but that said, that sort of memorable element, it didn't counteract the very stereotypical other elements. The bulk of this movie used a lot of CGI, heavy CGI, that wasn't very good, in my opinion, for the special effects. They used some really specific visuals that were kind of odd. There's a scene where the priests are at a homeless shelter and this tent blows in the wind, and it was just an odd way, and it kind of took me out of the movie, I guess. I just feel that their special effects weren't up to par with the cast that they brought in. I kind of expected more from a high budget movie, I guess. This movie is also very heavy on the gore element, so a lot of the special effects were goriness, and again, a lot of those were CGI as well, which isn't inherently bad, I suppose, but I just feel like they could have made it look a little bit more cohesive. The sound mixing was good. The movie offered a solid traditional score, and it was good. I liked the music a lot. They didn't go fancy with it, and I think that was the right move. They could have maybe spiced it up by getting a little experimental, but I feel like it's as easy to fail as succeed with that, so I think what they did was the right move. Additionally, regarding the demons, in this movie, as in many, the demons have a creepy voice when they're talking out of the person's mouth, so like, when a little kid would be talking, you'd hear this really deep voice. That's sort of the standard. The demons in this movie, whoever came up with it, they gave the demons a more echoey, strange voice. It definitely set this movie apart from other demon movies, but I unfortunately don't think it added to the scariness or the intimidating aura of the demon. Instead, it just came across a little bit odd. I don't think it was an inherently bad choice, but coupled with a lot of the other elements that came across a little bit mediocre, it just it didn't seem like they were playing it safe in the right areas of the special effects, whereas in others where they could have gone harder, they just played it safe. So, yeah. Together, this movie had some high production value. I just think the choices and how things were done were a little bit misplaced. The script could have been tweaked, I think, to be a little bit more impressive, and balancing some of the CGI use with a little bit more practical effects would have benefited the movie a lot. Now I'm going to be discussing how this movie stands apart from or blends into other films of the genre. I am going to be spoiling this movie, so if you don't want any spoilers, please take this as your cue to leave now. It was really lovely having you, and I hope to see you again soon. But leave now if you don't want any spoilers. As Father Peter and Father Daniel start to decide what to do and try to make a plan, Father Daniel's getting a little bit discouraged. Father Peter's not very encouraging, obviously, and it's just kind of a lot. He's getting really personally affected by seeing this kid tormented by this demon. So he wants to help, but he's just sort of getting frustrated. They decide that they have to break this kid out of the place that he's in, the jail slash hospital detention center place. So they try to break him out. However, the demon appears. Father Daniel and Father Peter don't seem to see it, but the kid says that he sees the demon. And when he looks past Father Daniel, all Father Daniel can see is Father Peter. Pretty weird, right? So they try to bust him out, and unfortunately the demon appears and just splatters chaos everywhere, kills a bunch of people, does creepy things. They're able to evade the demon with this kid, and they take him to the kid's house, where he murdered his family, and they take him up to the upstairs bedroom to perform this exorcism on him. The kid is begging, saying that he doesn't, like, please don't do this, please don't, rah, rah, all of that, because he's scared. But Father Peter is adamant. He's like, Father Daniel, we have to act now. This is the time. As they start to perform the exorcism, Daniel, who's fresh out of preschool, Father Daniel is fresh out of school, so even though he doesn't have the street smarts, he knows how everything is supposed to go down, and he starts to get suspicious as they're doing this exorcism because the little boy starts to burn, like his arms start to burn and his legs and stuff. And he vaguely remembers that that's how Father Peter's first exorcism ended, unfortunately, with the kid catching on fire. He starts to get suspicious because, if Father Peter is such a good exorcist, why are there so many more demon possessions now than there used to be? The demonic activity has actually seemed to increase even though Father Peter's working very hard. As Father Daniel is helping with his exorcism, he starts to realize that Father Peter is not doing things correctly. In an epic showdown, it's revealed that in Father Peter's very first exorcism, when the demon told him to just give up and make a deal with him, he totally did. He did. And ever since then, he's been performing exorcisms, and what he's actually been doing is converting the priests that he's been working with into servants of the demons, and he's been basically waging a war against the good stuff with the demons. So Father Daniel has to have a showdown with him, and he's able to kind of escape. They kind of defeat Father Peter, kind of escape. The Vatican kind of implies that they'll look into it. It ends on a vaguely hopeful note that's not particularly memorable, but you kind of get some closure, at least a little bit. A lot of these movies obviously involve the Catholic Church. Not all of them. There are a couple of demon movies that are, not Catholic specifically. But, Catholicism it's got a lot of really traditional, recognizable imagery. Everything about it's very memorable, so it's understandable visually why they would choose it. And of course, the Catholic Church has a long history with exorcism and such, so that makes sense as to why they would choose to do a movie with the Catholic Church involved. I think one element that did help this movie stand apart a little bit from other Catholic exorcist type movies is the notion of a priest working to corrupt other priests and sort of bring them to the dark side. I would argue that that's a timely fear, timely topic, as within the last couple of years, a lot of bad stuff that some priests have done has come to light, and the fact that the church was hiding it. I think it's a very relevant fear that this movie sort of incorporates in a really good way. I think it touches on this timely topic. That said, this movie was very forgettable in a lot of ways. The elements of the demon were quite boring. The demonic voice was a strange touch. Demons changing people's voices is a common element of these stories, but they changed it in not the stereotypical deep, raspy demon voice way, but rather sort of a, did I scare you? But rather in a strange, sort of like a DJ-like way with this booming voice that, it wasn't terrible. I just thought it was odd, personally. Additionally, this movie took a very roundabout way of getting to the point. I personally saw the plot twist that Father Peter was corrupt the whole time. I had kind of seen that coming. I think anybody could have. All the other elements I feel like have been done before. Obviously, I guess I won't say obviously, but I think many of us would agree that the most famous, most memorable horror movie about exorcisms is The Exorcist. Very famous, the blueprint, one might even say. That movie dealt with a priest who is sort of struggling internally, and has a personal issue with, the demon takes a personal interest in, personal issue with, you might say. This movie dealt with that too. And I wouldn't say it was copying The Exorcist in that way, but of course one will always compare a Catholic exorcist movie heavily involving a priest as a main character to The Exorcist. So in that way, obviously we must compare it to The Exorcist. This movie just played it safe in ways that I thought it should have experimented, and in the ways that it experimented, I thought it could have played it safe and would have had a better outcome. For example, the demon's voice. Even, for example, the gore scenes. There were a lot of very gory scenes that I didn't personally perceive them as scary as much as just decorative gore. And I think they maybe could have played with how they incorporated physical effects versus just the CGI, because the CGI I thought was quite jarring in most of the scenes. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. That said, with all of that, there are demon movies that are not specifically about, the priesthood that I think are quite good. One that comes to mind for me is The Possession. It's about a Jewish box demon. The movie stars Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and I really like it. It, in my opinion, it really follows the traditional, demon haunting type, possession type horror movie path really well, but still brought a really fresh take. This movie, it really didn't bring any new elements. One question that movies always have is like, why did the demon pick this person? And usually the answer is like, there is no answer. Just little things like that. That's I get it that if you're basing it on true stories, which some movies say they are, then sometimes there is no reason. But I just feel like because you were playing with certain elements of the formula, such as the priest who's on the inside being the one turning the other priests evil. I think they could have played with other elements a little bit more to bring a little bit more, just a little bit more uniqueness to it. Altogether, this movie was pretty unmemorable, and I don't want to be mean. It was kind of boring. I liked that it technically ended on a positive note. They ended it in such a murky, vague way. You know that they were probably planning for a sequel or something that they weren't going to announce, but it technically ends on a positive note. So I thought that was an edgy move in regards to just the trend of horror movies these days. Usually you think it's a positive note, but then it's bad, or just everything's depressing because nihilism, rah rah. But this movie, it wasn't that hopeful of a note, but it still attempted to give us a positive thing to cling to. You're kind of rooting for Daniel. You don't have a lot of faith in Daniel, but you're still rooting for him, I guess. At least I was. Go forth, Daniel, fight the demons. If I had to rate this movie, I would give it a 1.5 out of 5 stars. It really wasn't very good. It just wasn't memorable. It was kind of boring while I was watching it, and a lot of the elements were very predictable and just things you've seen before. It's a fun movie to pass the time with if you're just bored on an afternoon, weekend afternoon, and you need something to watch, but it's not a movie you're going to want to watch again. And if you're looking for something that's really going to challenge your mind, this movie definitely won't. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you disagree with me? Did you love this movie? Have I insulted your favorite movie of the year? I hope not, but I hope it's not your favorite movie of the year. But anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you seen this movie? Do you want to see this movie? It's been a while since I've talked to you guys, so I hope that you'll fill me in on your lives. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope that this review was helpful to you. I hope it was interesting to you. I apologize for how washed out I am. The more I look at the monitor, the more I am just disappointed. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this review. I hope to see you soon in another review. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye!